Welcome, my friends. Pull up a chair. Make yourself comfortable. I want to share something very important with you today. Over the past year, I sat down with 100 people who are in the twilight of their lives, men and women in their 70s, 80s, and 90s, people whose hands are worn, whose eyes have seen decades of history, and who have lived through the greatest economic booms and the most terrifying financial crashes of the last century. I asked them all a simple question, a question about money. I wanted to know their absolute biggest financial regret. You might think you know the answer. You might think they regretted buying the wrong stock or trusting the wrong broker. You might assume they still carry the pain of losing a fortune during the Great Recession of 2008, the dot-com crash, or the dark days of the 1970s, but you would be wrong. Their biggest regret wasn't what you think it is. It was something far deeper, something that has very little to do with the numbers in a bank account and everything to do with how we choose to live our fleeting time on this earth. To understand their answer, let me tell you a story about a man I met during these interviews. We will call him Arthur. Arthur is 84 years old now. He has a gentle smile and a quiet, slow voice. But back in the 1980s, Arthur was an ambitious man trying to build a secure future for his young family. He worked incredibly hard, saved his pennies, and diligently put his money into the stock market. He watched it grow year after year, feeling a deep sense of pride and security. And then came October 19th, 1987. A day history remembers as Black Monday. In a single day, the market dropped 22%. It was the largest one-day percentage decline in financial history. Arthur sat in his living room, staring at the television. He watched the news anchors sweating. He watched the ticker tape flashing red. He listened to the experts say the world was entering a new depression. He felt a cold dread settle in his stomach. The financial world felt like it was crumbling. So, Arthur did what many people do when they are terrified. He panicked. He picked up the telephone, called his broker, and told him to sell everything, every single share. He locked in his devastating losses, but in that exact moment, he felt a strange, intoxicating sense of relief. He thought he was protecting his family. He thought he was being responsible by stopping the bleeding. But here is the tragedy of Arthur's story. The market did not end that day. It stabilized, and then slowly, quietly, it began to climb. It recovered in 1988. It soared in the 1990s during the massive technological boom. But Arthur never got back in. He stayed in cash. He was completely traumatized, too afraid that the floor would fall out from under him once again. He spent the next 30 years watching from the sidelines as the market multiplied the wealth of those who had stayed patient. Arthur told me, with tears welling in his aged eyes, that he did not lose his life savings because of Black Monday. No, he lost his future wealth because of all the sunny Tuesdays and Wednesdays that followed. He realized, decades too late, that the crash was not the tragedy. His emotional reaction to the crash was the tragedy. Another woman I spoke with, named Eleanor, had a slightly different experience, but the same underlying pain. She lived through the rampant, terrifying inflation of the 1970s. She watched the purchasing power of the dollar melt away, and she was terrified of her money losing its value. Because of this fear, she chased every hot tip she could find. She traded constantly, jumping frantically from gold to real estate to penny stocks. She was always looking for the secret, magical move that would protect her wealth from the changing tides of the economy. Eleanor did not lose her money to a single dramatic crash like Arthur did. Instead, she bled her wealth dry through 1,000 tiny cuts, endless trading fees, terrible market timing, and a relentless, exhausting anxiety that followed her everywhere she went. As I spoke to Arthur, Eleanor, and 98 other seniors, a profound, undeniable pattern began to emerge. The core lesson they learned about money and the markets is something they simply do not teach in high school finance classes. The stock market is not a calculator. It is not just a cold machine of numbers and charts. It is a mirror. It reflects back to us our deepest human emotions. It shows us our naked fear and our desperate greed. The seniors I interviewed realized that building wealth is rarely about outsmarting the market or predicting the future. It is almost entirely about outlasting your own panic. It is about emotional endurance. We are wired biologically as human beings to run away from danger. When we see a fire, we run. When we hear a loud noise, we duck. When we see the stock market dropping aggressively, every instinct in our primal brain tells us to flee, to sell, to protect what little we have left. But the financial market is the one place in modern society where our survival instincts absolutely betray us. The seniors learned that the greatest investors are not the ones with the highest IQs, the most complex spreadsheets, or the best inside information. The greatest investors are simply the ones who can sit on their hands and do absolutely nothing while the rest of the world is screaming at them to do something. They learn the true, painful meaning of time in the market versus timing the market. Compounding interest is often described as the eighth wonder of the world, but compounding is not just a mathematical formula on a chalkboard. It is a reward for your patience. It is the universe paying you for your discipline. When you interrupt the compounding process because you are afraid of a temporary market dip, you are essentially cutting down an entire apple tree just to get a single apple. You destroy the very mechanism that creates generational wealth. The seniors understood this only after the time had passed. They looked back at the historical charts, not with anger at the market, but with a quiet, heavy sorrow for their own impatience. They saw clearly that every single terrifying economic event in history, world wars, great recessions, global pandemics, and political upheavals, was eventually reduced to a minor dip on a long-term upward curve. The market always recovered. Human ingenuity always pushed forward, but human confidence often did not, leaving ordinary people entirely behind. But here is the true emotional turning point of what I discovered during my year of interviews. When I asked them about their biggest regret, it was not just about the millions of dollars they could have had. It was not about the bigger house they could have bought, the vacations they could have taken, or the fancier cars they could have driven. The true regret, the agonizing pain that lingered in their hearts at the very end of their lives, was what the financial panic actually cost them. It was the invisible price tag of their fear. Arthur's real regret was not the missed wealth from the 1990s. It was the sleepless nights he endured. It was the dinners with his beautiful young children, where he was physically present at the table, but mentally 1,000 miles away, agonizing over red lines on a newspaper chart. It was the grey hairs brought on by watching the evening financial news in a state of terror. Eleanor's regret was the sheer exhaustion of always trying to stay one step ahead, the constant sickening knot of anxiety in her stomach that kept her from enjoying the simple pleasures of her life. Their biggest regret was worry itself. They let fear dictate their lives. They allowed the unpredictable wild swings of the global economy to control their personal, daily happiness. They spent precious years guarding their wealth with such fierce, blinding anxiety that they forgot to actually live. They traded their most precious, completely non-renewable asset, their time, in a futile attempt to control the uncontrollable. They missed out on the profound joy of the present moment because they were so utterly terrified of the future. One gentleman, a proud 88-year-old former teacher, looked at me with a soft sadness and said, "I spent 50 years worrying about running out of money. I never ran out of money, but I am about to run out of time. I spent my entire life guarding a pile of gold, and I forgot to step outside and feel the sun on my face." That is the deep, lasting wisdom I want to pass on to you today. Money is simply a tool. It is meant to buy you freedom and peace of mind, not to be a cruel, demanding master that causes you endless panic. The financial markets will always have storms. There will always be a crisis. There will always be a market crash, an inflation scare, a political disaster, or a loud reason to be afraid, broadcast on every news channel. But you must not let the weather outside dictate the peace inside your home. Plant your financial seeds with care. Diversify your investments, invest for the long term, and then have the incredible courage to walk away. Let the rain fall, let the sun shine. Do not dig up the seed every single day just to see if it is growing. That is exactly how you kill the roots. Have the wisdom to trust in time. You cannot control the stock market. You cannot control the economy. You can only control your reaction to it. Do not look back when you are 80 or 90 years old and realize you spent your entire life holding your breath. Breathe, live your life, love your family, go for a walk. Because true wealth is not just about having a rich, overflowing portfolio. It is about having a rich, beautiful life, completely free from the tyranny of fear. If this message resonated with your heart today, please subscribe to the channel and share this video with someone who might need to hear it. I would also love to hear your thoughts. Leave a comment below and tell me, what is the most important lesson you have learned about money, investing, and true happiness? Until next time, take care of your wealth, but more importantly, my friends, take care of your peace.